Hey, what's up? Jason here from Unity3D.College. Today we're going to go into a slightly bigger tutorial than usual, and what I'm going to run through is how to set up a character that you can run around with, track it with the camera, blow some stuff up, see things animate, and kind of go through the whole process of building up a little basic shooter. Now, I think we're going to split this into two parts, so I'm going to do the movement and tracking stuff in part one, and then we'll jump over to shooting and blowing things up from there in part two. So let's just get started. I'm going to show you kind of what the walking around part will look like, and then we'll go through the steps to actually rebuild it all. So here I've got the character. You can see I can walk around. He's kind of nicely tracked. He animates. I can run back behind things, control it all. And I'm controlling this with the keyboard now, but I could also just grab out an Xbox controller and move him around too. And then we've got a little limiter here so he can't get too close. And here he is walking around with the controller. So you can see it just kind of maps. Everything's just using the standard input system. All right, so let's kill this all, start over, and see kind of how this stuff's all put together and how to make everything work. So I'm going to create a new scene. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is start with this simple town light demo scene. So it had a nice little strip of land there, or strip of street. This is what I used to get started, and this was just a free asset pack from the asset store. I'll put a link to all the assets used down below though. Alright, so the first thing I need to do is just build out a real quick little area where the user or player could walk around. So I like to start just by creating an empty game object and naming it environment, and then resetting the position, and I use this just to put all of the environmental stuff underneath it. So buildings, maybe lighting, some other stuff that's really the scene, not so much the gameplay. So grab all these objects, drop them under the environment object, and then I'm just going to select all of them and duplicate. So Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac, and then hold Control and just drag so that they snap and get it nicely lined up. So you can see if you hold Control, you get that grid snapping where it moves by 1 unit each time instead of partial, so that way it's nicely lined up. Now I need some buildings on the other side, so I'm just going to select the buildings, both these building parts, and duplicate, drag them over a bit. Now I'm not holding Control, but I want to rotate all of these too, so I'm just going to do a 180 rotation on the Y, drag them kind of in, and build up this little street, and I think I'll drag it just that way a bit. Maybe a little bit in so that it's kind of up on the sidewalk. Not going to get it perfect, but good enough. Okay, now move some of these cars maybe a little bit out of the way. Let's grab these, and maybe this time I'll just drop some cars at the end to kind of block the view, and then let's put a pizza place at the end this time. So here I'm going to take that, rotate it, what do we need, 180. There we go. And it doesn't quite fill the area, but since I'm not being picky right now, I'm just going to scale it and stretch it a little bit. It's kind of far away. It probably won't be too noticeable. All right, now I want to move my camera, kind of get that lined up so I make sure I have a good view. And I think that looks good. Good enough at least. So I've got a view where I can kind of move my player around. Now let's get started with actually setting up the character. So we've got the environment, and I've got this Toon Soldier that I downloaded, again, free from the asset store, and I'll have a link below. And I'm going to go in and take this Toon Soldier demo and drop it into my scene. But before I do that, I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to name this player. And then I'm going to drop the Toon Soldier underneath it as a child. And the reason I do this is I want to be able to separate out my logic of my game from the visuals and the art. So if the Toon Soldier right here is a child, then I can swap out the character pretty easily without big changes to the player. It just makes it a little bit simpler. It's also easier to do live swapping. I could just, switch the model and not have to change out different player prefabs or anything like that. So I've got the player here selected. I'm going to move him up and closer to me. In fact, I'm going to get down where I want him, hit Control-Shift-F to move him right to where I am. And then I'll just zero out his rotations and slide him just down so he's just over the ground. There we go. It's like negative 0.19, and I think that's because this ground piece right here is just a little bit lower than 0. Alright, so I've got that set up. Now I need to add a character controller. So I'm just going to use a basic character controller, drop that right onto the player here. Remember, not onto the art part. We want to have all of the control and logic on the player, separated off from the model. And if you look here, you'll see that little capsule is down in the ground. I'm just going to move that up by adjusting the Y value of the center to 1. Now, ideally, you probably want this to match up so that it really goes up to his head if we were doing some collision checks for him, or we want to make sure he can't, not walk into something too short, but I don't really care for this case, so I'm just going to leave it at 1. But if you needed to do that, you'd adjust the height and the Y center here to line them up and maybe pull in or out the radius as well. All right, so we've got a character here. Right now he doesn't do anything though, so I want to make him move. So I'm going to create a new script. In fact, I've got one here, but I'm going to create a new version and just go straight from scratch. So we'll do a new script, and we're just going to call this, actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rename this to player movement 2, because that's my old one. I'm going to create a new player movement script. And I'm going to have to go in there and just update my old script and rename that so that it doesn't break things in the actual class. But I think we'll be good. I kind of want to go through this whole process of rebuilding this instead. So there we go. Got that one done. Let's just get that out of here and open up the actual new player move script. So that's going to be, if you're in Visual Studio, I should probably make that fit. So if you're in Visual Studio, and you'll see your project in an editor version of your project, if you want to look for scripts in here, you can just go down under the main project, assets, and then wherever you keep them. Normally, I think scripts or a code folder, something like that is where you should find this stuff, but depends on your project and how you like to lay things out. So I've got an empty script here. I'm going to delete the start method and this comment over update, and then I use Control K, Control D to just clean up the formatting a little bit, and explicitly call this update method private. Actually, I think I do want a start method, but we'll worry about that in a moment. So what I want to do now is read the input. So to do that, I'm just going to do var horizontal equals input.getAxis horizontal. Now the casing on this string name here is important. You have to match it. It's going to line up with what's in the input settings. I'll show you that in a moment too. And then I'm going to copy this and do another one for vertical. And here we'll just do vertical. And now for our variables, keep them lowercase because they're variables that aren't public. You usually keep them lowercase to match with standards. All right, so now I've got a horizontal and vertical, and I need to figure out a movement vector. So to do that, I'm just going to do var movement equals new vector 3. And I'm going to pass in the horizontal value for the x. And we're not going to use y because that would make us move up and down. So we'll put a 0 for the y. And then we'll use vertical for the z. Now to move my character, I want to access the character controller and have it do the actual movement. That way the collisions will work right, he'll fall down, everything will kind of just work kind of almost magically. So to do that, I need a reference to my character controller. So I could do something like get component character controller dot simple move and pass in movement and then multiply some stuff out. But I really don't want to be calling get component every update. In this case, it wouldn't actually make a difference, but it's just not a good practice to get into. So I'm going to cut this part, and I'm going to go up here and just do private void awake. And if you just hit enter when you're halfway done with those, by the way, in Visual Studio, if everything's working right, it should autocomplete, give you your parentheses and your little squiggly braces. So in awake, what I want to do is cache that character controller. So I'm going to do character controller, lowercase c on the one, because it's going to be a variable, equals, and I'm just going to paste in that get component character controller that I had from before, hit a semicolon, and then if I hit control period, I'll get the option to generate a field, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm just going to generate a character controller field. We're going to cache it in awake, so that way we only call get component once. Again, not a huge deal in this case, but in a bigger project, it's important. So it's just a good habit to get into. And then down here in update, we'll just call the reference to that character controller, and we'll call it simple move. Now, we don't want to just pass in movement. We want this to be based off of the speed our game is running at, so our frame rate. And to do that, we multiply by time.delta time. So I can save this and move around. In fact, let's do that first. Before we go any further, let's hit play. Oh, wait. Before I hit play, I need to add the script. I don't know about you guys, but I do this all the time where I write a new script, get it all ready, get it working, start playing, and then I realize that I never actually hooked up my script that I wrote. So there we go. Let's drop this player movement script on, hit play. And theoretically, if everything's going good, oh, I can't really walk. So what happened there? The issue is that my my character is falling through the world because there are no colliders on the rest of the world. If you look at these, if I select these, there's no collider here, just renderers. No collider on the buildings, no collider on these. Now, there are a couple ways you could set this up. For a simple project like this where I'm not building out a big area, there are not a lot of huge polygon meshes. What I like to do is just find all the mesh renderers. So just up in here, just type mesh renderer, no spaces, not case sensitive. That'll find all of them. You can see right here. It's not going to find the skinned mesh renderers. You notice he's kind of grayed out and not selected. So then I just go over here and I hit Control A to select all of them. And then you have to uncheck this demo scene. Or I don't know if you have to anymore, but you used to. So I uncheck that and then just go add component, mesh renderer. Now, of course, oh, not mesh renderer, mesh collider, sorry. Now, of course, if you already have mesh colliders on some of these things, you can't just, select all and do it. But if, in this case, it works. Ideally, you probably want to set these up individually, again, for your project. If you have a big, giant city, a box collider is probably better than a mesh collider on these buildings or on these ground pieces. But yeah, like I said, doesn't matter right now, so we'll just go with mesh colliders. And now I should be able to hit play and see what happens. I shouldn't fall through at least. There we go, not falling through. And I am kind of able to move. Let's see, so if I select my player and I hit it, look, if you look at these numbers, you can see that they're changing. They're just changing really, really, really small. So what we need to do is multiply this movement vector a bit by some speed. So I'm going to add another variable here, and I'm going to call this move speed. So we're going to move it, the movement direction times the time.delta time times move speed. And I'll hit Control period and generate a field for move speed, and it's going to wrongly make it a vector 3. Really what I want is a float. And I want to set it to a default value of, let's go with like 100. And now I'm going to add the serialized field attribute over it, so that way I can go into the editor and modify this at runtime and figure out a good speed. So let's try one more time. I'm going to select the player this time, hit play, and then we'll move around and play with the move speed. There we go. Let's hit play. All right, walking around any second now. There we go. Okay, so now I should be able to walk. I did not save my script. Let's jump back over to code one more time. Sorry about that. Oh, no, it was just recompiling. Okay, so we've got move speed there, and I should be able to move around. Look at that. I can move kind of side to side, left and right. The controls aren't actually the direction I want, and the speed's a little slow. Let's turn this up to maybe like 300. There we go. That feels a little bit better. But right now, when I hit forward and back, I'm actually moving in his forward and back. And if I hit left and right, I'm moving in his left and right. And that's not because of the direction he's facing. It's because of the orientation with everything. So if I hit it again, still get the same movement. So what I want to do here, and there are a couple options. I could change the control stuff. In this case, though, what I like to do is just go in here, select my environment. In fact, let's make the player a child of the environment for one moment. Go to the environment, I'll zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. So now, let's see. Now where's my player? My player's right there, and I'll move my camera over here to look at him. Hit play, and I can't remember if I needed to go 90 or negative 90 now. Well, we'll find out in a second. So here we go. Now I walk. Oh, yep, it's backwards. So I'll select my environment, flip that over to negative 90. And what's happening here is I'm really just adjusting the orientation of the world so that my camera is kind of lined up with the way the controls are oriented. Which makes sense for this game. Like, we want it to line up so that when I press forward, I'm walking down the alley. If I hit left, I go towards the left of the alley. Down, I come towards me. Oh, didn't move my camera. There we go. So let's get that here, get the camera in position, press play, and movement should be pretty smooth and in the right directions. Let's see. There we go. Movement's good. I think I did my change to move speed while we were playing, so it didn't save. So now that I'm not playing, I'll pull the player back out of the environment. He's not part of the environment. Crank that move speed back up. And move on to the next part. So you saw in the other video, or the beginning of the video, he's animating when he walks. He's not just standing around and sliding, right? So let's set up an animation controller to make that work. So I'm going to go under assets, and we're just going to create a new folder. and call this animation. And I'm going to create an animation controller under here. So just go right click and go to animator controller. I would say animator, animation controller, but it's the one that it says on the screen. So let's call this soldier animator, or let's call it soldier controller. It's not really the animator. The animator is on the actual soldier there. So once this is created, I'm going to select the soldier. There we go. And assign it to his animator. Now, if you don't have an animator on your character, it's probably because it wasn't set up as a humanoid. You may want to switch characters or switch it over to be a humanoid and add an animator to it. Okay, now I've got the animator. I'm going to double click on it to open it up. And if you've never used the Mechanim animation system before, don't worry. It's relatively straightforward. We're going to do semi-advanced concepts, but I'm not going to go too complicated here. So for this animator, what I want to do is assign the animations for this character. Now this guy came with a folder full of animations. He's got an idle, he's got a run, he's got a shoot, and a burst shoot. And this is the old controller that I made in my first run through with this. So what I want to do is take the animator, or the, assault combat idle, and just drag it and drop it on here. Now you want to make sure that you grab the animation here, that you expand out these FBX files, and you'll see the animations right down there. And if you don't know how to look at the animations, by the way, if you click on the mesh, these are actually little tabs here, and you can see the animations, and you can kind of get a little preview of them. You can adjust their looping settings, cut them, trim them, speed them up, and anything like that that you need to do. But here, we don't really need that. We just need to make sure that you expand it, grab it out, and drop it on. Now, when you drop it on, the first one that you drop on is going to become orange, and orange is because it's the default one. See, if I drop another one on here, like run, it's gray. There's no line to it. It's not the default. Now, I don't actually just want to use an animator. If I do this and I just hit play, you're going to see that he's just going to sit in his idle state. So let's try it real quick. Just demo it. So you see he's in idle and he just kind of stays there. He moves around, but he still just kind of idles while he's moving. It doesn't matter what he's doing. He's just constantly idling. Now, I want him to speed up and slow down based off of the speed that we're going, right? We want him to walk and then go back to an idle. So to set that up, what I'm going to do is right click here and hit create new blend tree in state. And I'm going to rename this because it's no longer going to be just an idle. I'm going to call this, just call it motion for now. Now, if I double click on this once it's a blend tree, you'll see it looks a little bit different. And if you look up here, this is kind of like a folder structure in Windows or on a Mac or something with the little back and navigation stuff. So I can click on it to go into motion and then click back to base layer to go back to it. Now I'm going to click on my blend tree, and over here you see we have a list of motions that's empty, and I want to add some new motions. So I'm going to hit add motion field twice, and then I'm going to grab this assault combat idle, drop that down to be the first motion, and then I'm going to take run and make that be the second motion. Now right now there's a parameter named blend that got automatically created when I made this blend tree. I'm actually going to delete this. Yep. And then we're going to hit plus and add a new float and name it speed. Now up here, there's a field for the parameter for the blend tree. So now I need to pick speed from that drop down. Blend was no longer in existence. What's going to happen here is based off of the speed value, we're going to blend between idle and run. So if speed is at 0, the threshold of 0, idle will play. This is the speed that the animation will play at, like the playback speed. So it'll play at normal speed, just so you can use it to double things or slow them down, whatever you need. Most of the time, this is 1 or semi-near 1, depending on how your blend tree is set up. But then if the value of speed right here is 1 or greater than 1, we're going to be in the run animation. And as we kind of go through it, like if I slide this up and down, you can see it down here in the bottom. So I'm going to hit play. And here, let's just make this a little bit bigger, get a good view of the character. So he's never really going to be at this weird speed. He's usually going to be at 0, or he's going to be right around 1 or above 1. So you can see as this goes up and down, kind of blends between the two. Now, what you would usually do is also add in a walk here so that there's a little bit of threshold if you're going to have multiple speeds. Here we just have kind of like going and stopped. It's good enough though. All right, so I'm going to go back and we're going to jump back into the scene view. If I hit play now, you'll see that the animation still plays. We still get that idle, but the moving around doesn't affect the speed. If I go to the animator tab and set the value of 1 here, go back to the game view, you'll see now he's running permanently. So what we want to do is adjust that speed variable in our code. So let's jump back over to the code. Let's see, that's right here. Oh, 1 second. Oh, there it is. Okay, so what we want to do is set a parameter on the character's animator. So we're going to need to get the animator, and I'm going to do that in awake again. So we're going to do animator, lowercase a, because it's going to be a new variable, equals get component in children animator with capital A and semicolon, the parentheses, and then I hit control period again, generate the field, and we'll see we have a field up here for animator. And these don't have the serialized field attribute on them because we're not going to be editing them in the inspector. We're just getting them in awake and caching them. All right, so down here, right after we do the movement, let's just add another space here, and we call animator.setFloat, and we're going to pass in the name of the float. Again, case sensitive here, so I named it speed with a capital S. Yours has to match whatever you named it. So I'm passing in speed, and the value I'm going to pass in is actually going to be movement.magnitude. So if I'm on a controller and I push kind of part way over, my magnitude's not going to be a full 1. If I go all the way on any edge or I'm holding the keyboard, it's going to be 1, maybe a little bit above 1. But it's not going to be variable in between there unless you're using a controller. So anyway, this gets us the value, the magnitude of that vector. Works great as a speed variable. And I'm going to hit semicolon, save, and jump back into the project, and we should be able to kind of play and watch our guy walk around, stop walking, start walking. Let's try it. So hit play, and game view should pop up. And let's see, now we walk, and as I walk, you see he animates, and when I stop, he stops. He's still not quite right though, because he's not facing the right direction, right? If I walk this way, he's kind of running sideways. Pretty weird. So let's fix that. Let's jump back over to the player movement script one more time. And here, what we want to do is set the rotation of this guy. Now, there are a couple ways we could do this. We could get the new direction. So we can do like quaternion new direction equals quaternion dot look rotation. And then we pass in the movement vector. So this is going to get us a quaternion from the vector direction. Just a nice easy call to quaternion.lookRotation. And then we can do something like transform.rotation equals new direction. Save that off, hit play, and now we should see him kind of instantly snap to the correct direction. Any second now. All right, so if I go right, he instantly snaps right. I go down, he snaps down. I go left, he snaps left. And if I let go, he actually snaps back to forward. So that's kind of right. It's semi doing what we want, but we really want it to be a lot smoother, and we also don't want that weird snapping back when I let go. Right, so let's fix those two things. The first thing, to fix that snapping, all we really need to do is check here. We'll go if movement.magnitude is greater than 0, then do this stuff. So that way, if we're not moving at all, if we've let go of the keyboard, magnitude is at 0, we don't want to rotate. We just want to leave you facing the same direction that you are. So we'll only rotate if there is a magnitude here. The other thing that we want to do is smooth out this rotation. So to do that, we'll go transform.rotation. Instead of setting it to new direction, we use quaternion.slurp, and then we'll pass in the existing current rotation, transform.rotation. Then we'll pass in, oh, sorry, not multiply. Then the target rotation, which is the new direction. And then we need to give it a float for how far to go. And to do this, what I usually do is time.delta time times a turn speed variable. So this way, we're not moving it all the way. It's kind of, we're just going to slowly turn it, and that speed of how fast we turn it will be based off of this turn speed variable. Turn speed doesn't exist, so again, control period in Visual Studio, generate a field, F12 to go to it, and then I'm going to copy the serialized field attribute, paste it right up there, and give it some default value. I think 5 was a good value in my last test. So save that off, hit play one more time. We've almost got a smoothly walking character. Let's see. All right, let's move him around. Yep, he's rotating. He looks good. I think I want to turn up his move speed just a little bit though. Go to like 400. Kind of lines up a little bit better with his animation there. Perfect. So now he's moving around. The last thing I want to do on here is fix up the camera controls. So you may have noticed in the first video, the camera was kind of focusing on him and moving around, and it wasn't just looking straight forward the whole time. So let's fix that. To do that, what I do is import the Cinemachine asset from Unity. It's an amazing asset, and I did a whole video on it. Totally recommend it. Once it's in, though, we'll just go to the Cinemachine menu and create a virtual camera. Now, when you do that, if it's your first one, it's actually going to reset your camera. So your main camera is now moved to 0, 0, just like this transform of this thing, and it can be a little bit frustrating. So you might want to copy your camera's position before you do that. But if you're like me and you don't really care, you just kind of get into the position that you want your VCam at, and you do Control-Shift-F, and that's going to place it right here. So now I've got the camera right there, and it's not set to look at this guy yet. So to do that, all I need to do is grab the Toon Soldier, drop him into the Look At field of the virtual camera, and press play. Now watch what happens. It's going to track nicely along with this guy as he walks. There we go. And you see it's tracking actually at his feet because the root of this character is at his feet. If I want to track a different part, like maybe I want to keep it on his face or his head or something else, I just need to grab that other piece and make that the child. So let's say I wanted to go with, let's grab his head, right? So we can get his face nice and close when he gets in there. So I've got the head expanded. I'm going to go to the VCam, assign the head, and now I've got a good view of his face. And this overlay here, go away if you click off the VCam. So there we go. Now I can see him. He's kind of centered right there, and his face is what I see. I'm going to stop playing, and I'm going to lose that setting, so I'm going to reselect it, reassign it, and let's save. Now, there are two other things that I did in there that I haven't fixed yet, so let's do those, and then we'll end it, and then go on to actually shooting and blowing up these cars in the next video. All right, and those two things. The first is if I keep walking, you'll see I can just kind of walk right through and run off the map. Not something I want to do. So let me demo that real quick and then show you the super, super simple way to fix it. So if I just grab and start walking in, keep walking. Oh, look, I went to the edge. I can even theoretically walk off the edge and fall down and fall forever. So to fix that, the nice, quick, simple solution, you probably already guessed, just create a cube, get it into position. Let's see, let's get it right about here. Whatever, Control-Shift-F. Remember to move things right to you. We'll move it forward a little bit, clear out that nonsensical rotation, and then scale it. So grab the scale tool, drag it over here, and then I'll just uncheck the mesh render. Now I've got a little invisible wall, and my guy should not be able to walk through it. I'm gonna hit play, move him, and make sure that it's far enough out. There we go. So this is as close as I can come to the camera. I can't go past that. Perfect. And I can still walk out here, and I'm blocked, from falling off by all these buildings and stuff. So I don't have to worry too much, around that. You could also put in extra invisible walls depending on how your map is set up, but here we don't really need it. The last thing is this really crappy gray sky. So that's just because this asset pack that I'm using had the sky set up with no skybox and a solid gray. Kind of weird, but whatever. Let's change that. I'm going to actually select here for the skybox material, and I'll just grab the default skybox for now. Maybe in another video, I'll grab a prettier skybox, but I think that already is much better than solid gray at the very least. Press play, run around one more time, and then I think we're kind of wrap this up. There we go. So now I've got a character. I can run around. I can also, again, still use the controller, run around. He's nicely tracked, stays in view, and he's all ready to get his gun hooked up and start blowing stuff up. All right, so like I said, in the next video, I'll go on to details on how to blow stuff up. Maybe we'll keep expanding and start making things prettier, put in some post effects, add in some AI that walks in, other fun kind of stuff like that. Hopefully you're able to keep up. If you have questions or something wasn't clear on this part of the guide, just let me know. Drop a comment below. I'll be happy to answer. And then, if you want to see the next video, don't forget to subscribe. get alerts and all that, so you get notified when it comes out. My plan is to just release these, back to back next day, so this should be quick. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.